It's working.
He's hilarious, Fish. I haven't seen him for a while.
What's up, everybody? It's your bro Quincy. Today's Sunday Funday. We're gonna be hanging out. Um, I was in a space earlier, or I was in a few spaces earlier. Um, just kind of hanging out, seeing what's up. See some XRP spaces. See some sort of I don't know crypto-based spaces. So we're just gonna be hanging out Sunday Funday. Why not?
Legend. I like this.
What the fuck?
What you guys don't?
I love you already, Mr.
What, you
Fish.
guys don't take shits?
I do that as well, but I never say that I'm taking a shit.
I don't give a
So,
fuck.
like, I just keep it
Like I don't
secret.
care, bro. Like what are you gonna?
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a psychopath. I just like to take a shit, and everybody's listening to me, and
Yeah,
then
yeah. But
they
the
have
thing
no
is, though,
clue.
between me and you, is that I don't give a fuck about what people think about me, and you do. So that's probably the
Yeah,
difference.
I When do, did dude. I do.
Mm.
When
did you get your account back, Fish?
I might hop back in there. I don't know what they're talking about. Um, one thing that I'm sort of trying to do. Hopefully, this would be cool. Hopefully tomorrow I'll have a space with XPECTRE on I guess you could say on a Twitter space. I love talking with those guys. I love seeing the spaces that they build and sort of the their rendition of the metaverse. I think is really cool. It's sort of on par with what I see with VR chat, but with like mods included as well. And I'm hoping I'm able to not only talk with them sort of consistently on things that they're building, but also be able to talk with others on what they're building as well. So hopefully tomorrow, oh gosh, I think it'd be 10 o'clock Mountain Time for me. I'm not sure what the times would be elsewhere, but yeah, tomorrow I'll be having a chat with them as well. That's gonna be super cool. Um, oh my goodness. I was really hoping to hop in this one because I thought, well, I wasn't here earlier and it was kind of cool, but I don't know what they're talking about now. I don't know what this is all about.
Don't be like the rest of these girls, even though they're not gonna be your friends, because you're not gonna gossip, and you just shut your mouth and keep and just watch. And I have seen people fired so many times, and we are moving into a new era, and I hope that what we mentioned earlier, a jubilee is coming. Uh,
Yes, it is.
and so thank you for listening to me.
Amen,
We love
amen.
you, April. We love you. We are here to help you and hold you up to the glory of God and to the scriptures. We love you, sister. You're not alone. You have friends here. And I sent you a DM with my cell phone number. You feel free to call me anytime you feel like you need to just sit down and, shoot the crap or whatever. I'm here for you day or night.
Likewise, my sister April, we spoke in a DM the other night, and you shared with me your experience in the banking sector. I tell you, God is positioning people that He wants to have these insights and this knowledge to share with the body of Christ.
Yeah, I'm not really sure where that's going. I guess they're talking about Christ or Jesus token or something. I don't know. I was not expecting that. Or at least when I saw like sort of the memes or whatever, I didn't know it was gonna be like actual church or whatever. Gosh, I thought there'd be more stuff going on here. I thought it'd be. It was earlier, that's why I thought I'd start, but I don't know. Um, oh goodness. That's the one thing that I sort of like. I love Twitter Spaces, but I sort of hate them. I love them because you can interact with anybody and have like really cool combos. But at the same time, like I'm like, I don't even know what you guys are talking about. Like, I guess, I mean, maybe it's just a Christian space, but even before they were just in the XRP space, they were just kind of like cursing each other out. Give me one moment. I might try hopping in the XRP space again, see what's up. If not, I might just hang out and just monologue on whatever topic you guys sort of pitch me or whatever. Um, yeah, let's see what's up.
I have no idea, but like, it's
He
probably
probably
I have
sells
no
cars
sure, dude.
like that are like fucking salvage, ready to go
He
out.
sells them to Africa.
Yeah, he's a savage, that dude. Fucking hell.
Yo, yo, it's
That
funny.
dude.
Last time,
He doesn't give a fuck. I
last
kind of
time we were
respect
on a
him, though.
space, we were on a. It didn't work until the end, and then right at the very end, before he left the space, he goes, "Yes, yes, and there is a brotherhood. If you own 1 million or more coins, we have a private chat." And I'm like, "So you, So that just admits that when you guys are ready to sell, you're gonna talk about it in your private chat and then sell it after. And
I actually I made profit on him. Like he told me to buy this token, and I saw what he's doing, and I
yeah,
said,
no,
okay,
that's fine, bro.
there's no much
Making money is
liquidity.
cool. That's
I
cool,
put
but
I put not much in it. I put like a few $100 in it, and it's
yeah,
like
that's not the point, though.
it went up.
Actually,
Anybody,
if you
I
anybody,
remember
sold,
during the
and then
conversation,
the future
he started to
price
talk
came
about
up.
how he's taken profits, and someone fish from the Brotherhood contacted me and said that you know, in the Brotherhood chat, he showed me screenshots that they're all not allowed to sell until it's over $1, including him. But he found out in the chat that night with us putting pressure on him that he's been selling, and like, you know, now
yeah,
they're all
yeah,
like, oh my god, Shlomo's been selling on us while telling us we're not allowed to sell till $1. We
yeah.
have to hold on to it, you
But they're
know.
so stupid that they're
I don't know if I want to hang on there. Oh my gosh, I thought there was so much more going on. I was literally in the cool space earlier, and I was like, oh, I should have started. And as soon as I start, it's like, ah, whatever. Hopefully, a new space may pop up. All right. I guess in this case, if anybody in the chat has any questions, fire them until I can figure out a good topic to start going in on. I was hoping to be able to hop in one of these spaces and just chat. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. I don't know what's going on in that Jesus space. And I guess it's a dad's monthly space, but I'm not a dad, so. But I would have prepared a topic if I knew this was gonna be so boring. Um, well, okay. Well, here's one thing that I think is super interesting, and it goes into meeting with XPECTRE tomorrow. So one thing that I sort of have a overindulgence in is like VR and like, oh, where is it? It's over there. Oh, can you see it? There you go. Yeah, VR and all the different types of like metaverse spaces, virtual spaces. And originally I was gonna go into like VR chat and like get into building skins and get into building worlds. And then I was introduced to like XPECTRE and how you can basically like mod on top of other type of builds and other type of worlds, and you can like do a lot more than you otherwise would be able to do in VR chat, as well as be able to, people like to recognize the idea of tokenizing, but you can reference a token as a particular in-game object and then move that object to different worlds. And then each world is a set of servers that's being hosted by each individual party, whether these are games or whether these are individuals that are hosting these worlds. These worlds are hosted, and people can move items from different worlds. In terms of like being able to, they're able to bring items into different worlds that are able to interact with each other. I know in like VR chat, and this is something that I like sort of love, or at least I sort of experienced, and I think is really cool. In VR chat, they sort of have this, but they save most of the data in the skin you may have, and you might have some element where you can save certain facets of the world or certain like save states or whatever. But ideally, sort of in the Expectoverse, you can essentially use the blockchain as a means of keeping track of all those different items between all those different worlds. And then you can bring those items into different worlds and interact with them with other items, as well as interact with the broader world. And then there's also an idea of, well, if someone has a skin and you think it's really cool, you could just like click on them and you could buy it, and the person that generated the skin can get a portion of the revenue, and you could essentially have rendering rights to the skin. So yeah, it's anywho, with that, I was gonna sort of get into like sort of building a little bit in VR, but or VR chat, but I think I might tilt it a little bit to Spectreverse, in terms of being able to do similar things, but be able to build these items that that people can take in and out of different worlds. You can't quite do that in VR chat. There's sort of weird workarounds or whatever. But I think it'd be something really cool. I think it'd be something that really blows up. I think with people being, and the whole premise of that is anybody can add additional mods onto the application that you're building, or onto the like world, game, whatever that you're building. So you don't have to wait for like an update to come out. Someone can build a mod, and then you can just buy the mod, and then you can render that mod in whatever world you're in and interact with different things. And ideally, that'd be pretty seamless too. I saw a few questions in here. And you know what's happening in crypto world right now? Yeah, what seems like we're in a hype cycle, and it seems like everyone's panicking now. So we're in the panic portion of the hype cycle. That's all I've got for that. I feel like a lot of these things, when people ask this, it very just comes down to like market sentiment. So it may not actually be anything in the market that's doing anything. I just think sentiment's changing in such a way that people are reacting to it, or reacting in that regard. And then you see whatever volatility that comes from that. But yeah, oh, greetings from Sweden. Nice, nice. Um, let's see. I'm like hesitant to hop in there again. Um, although like I don't know. I thought there'd be more stuff going on. Honestly, I might just kill it and just like not even kill it, but I might just like chill for a bit. Um, yeah, if you got any questions, fire them in the chat, and we'll see. Well, I'll hop in here one more time. If it sucks, we'll do something else.
Job that he did was just horrible.
I think I still have it. Let me see.
Yeah, it's Mickey. She'll post it on the top. It's
No, I've seen it. I can see the crop on the picture that I'm looking at. I get it. Fair enough.
yeah. You see how it's not perfect on the
Yeah,
side.
looks shit.
But the username is not even your username. I don't know. It doesn't
Right,
even
so-
make sense
Right,
at
so
all.
that's
It's
what I'm
just your
trying-
pic. It's just
I'm
your
just looking
picture.
at a screenshot. I couldn't click the username. It was more just in case it had been hacked. I was going to tell him to change.
No, I
his password.
appreciate it, bro. I don't have any alt accounts. I only have one, and that one's been suspended since 2021. So
That
it's
was
fun.
the Savage Fish. I remember Savage
You
Fish.
can't get that one back, Fish?
Honestly,
Or you
no,
don't care for it?
I don't really care. To be completely honest with you, I actually don't see myself staying on Twitter for another 2 months. Honestly, I'm on Spaces now. That's being on a Space is the only thing I could do because I've been my account's locked. Telegram buddies, and yeah, it's kind of annoying to deal with, and that's what happened when you
But
call.
what, they report a tweet or like how
Yeah,
do you
so right, so they have a Telegram group, right, and it's probably him and his brotherhood, right? So they mass report my account once a week on a tweet that seems a little bit like it could be against the lines. Like if I'm watching the Jet game and I'm like, Jesus Christ, number 23 sucks. They'll like mass spam it and mass report it. It's kind of like they should really do something else with their life, but it's kind of getting annoying. Like I'll just be at work and I'll get an email from Twitter saying that my account's been locked for, I don't know, whatever reason. Not suspended, just locked, which means that you can't like, retweet, but you can join the space.
I feel
Okay.
like the original Fish account and the original Scam Detective 5 account were like savages. And I think the new versions are just slightly toned down a bit.
Well, scams, that's what happened to your account, right? Like you got mass reported by a whole bunch of people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's weird because if you view Scam.
All right, whatever. Someone actually asked a really cool question, and I didn't even know what they were going to get into, so whatever. Somebody asked, what industries can be created and destroyed by the use of smart contracts? Are smart contracts equally as important as the blockchain? So, blockchain or smart contracts are it's just code that runs on the blockchain. And when we talk about like the blockchain being decentralized, we also talk about that code also being decentralized. So you can have code that runs autonomously. And not only can that code run autonomously, it can interact with other code that's running autonomously as well. So in terms of like the smart contract in relation to the blockchain is a piece of infrastructure, and smart contracts are code that run on top of that. Sort of like how you may run a script on a server or something, except these are decentralized servers and these are decentralized scripts. Now, in terms of what industries that can be created or destroyed from smart contracts, this is actually a really cool, sort of like a really cool like question in a sense, because the obvious answers are like when we look at like DeFi and finance and tokenization, there's an element where these smart contracts can conduct services that brokers would or bankers would traditionally do. And the biggest thing is whether it's like a swap, whether it's like a DEX, whether it's like a derivative, whether it's like an asset. These assets and the infrastructure and the systems that manage uh, these assets and the systems that manage these assets can now have a means to be entirely programmatic rather than having a collection of brokers can collaborate or communicate with a bunch of other brokers or bankers to be able to pass these assets or be able to conduct these services. So now anybody can be able to engage with anybody as opposed to going through third-party services, and you can use smart contracts to automate what would have otherwise been a manual process. So like DEX is a simple example. You could run an exchange, a company could run an exchange, but a DEX is essentially running as a decentralized exchange, and anybody can take any asset and put it in that exchange. That DEX just took the role of a exchange, like whatever jobs or whatever that would have taken the role of a traditional exchange, that DEX is now providing that service. Same for swaps, same for even tokenization. The administrators, the engineers that manage the administration for all of their systems, that's something that would have been hosted in some sort of like traditional environment. If you're able to operate some of this on the blockchain, you don't necessarily need those engineers to host that traditional environment to be able to conduct those services. They can operate autonomously. So that's like one of the biggest things. And that's the thing, like that's like DeFi finance. That's a really simple way to put it out. But the biggest thing is focusing on automation and being able to pass units of account to multiple automations. And like I said, when we talk about like finance, we talk about like tokenization and like derivatives and swaps and dexes and stuff. We can talk about like supply chain and all that too. Really, a smart contract is just an app, right? And these apps have certain benefits that other apps don't have. Like I said, they run decentrally. They're self-hosted. You don't, like I said, you don't pay hosting costs because of the self-hosted element, and anybody can easily access it without you having to manage any sort of additional tools or APIs. And it's the real automation just comes from the fact that you host less infrastructure to manage more back-end logic, and that logic runs on a autonomous system as opposed to individual like brokers managing individual systems that are communicating with each other. Oh, interesting question. So somebody just asked, hold on, let me pin this. Oh goodness. Okay, I can't find it on here, but I see it on there. Um, can prices of these digital assets move when no one's buying or selling? So a lot of people have this idea of crypto through the lens or crypto adoption through the lens of everybody going to an exchange and buying more crypto, and then everybody going to an exchange and selling their crypto. And one thing that gets completely neglected is when we talk about tokenization. One of the biggest things that these cryptocurrencies are they're like a neutral form of capital, which means anybody in the world that wants to be able to engage with anybody else in the world can opt into this form of capital as a trade medium. People would traditionally, in the traditional system, use dollars to do this. That's like the main premise for dollars, like in a global scale. But obviously, there's like a whole bunch of stuff with that in terms of like how you're able to manage that instrument. So you use the native cryptocurrency as a neutral form of a neutral form of capital. And as oh, goodness, oh yeah, and as uh, assets are tokenized on chain, people will use that neutral form of capital to engage with those assets. And as there's more demand for those assets, there's more demand for the native cryptocurrency to trade those assets. So as you start seeing on-chain transaction volume increase, that's just as much demand as you would see on the exchanges. But instead of people swapping dollars for XDC, they're swapping an asset for XDC or XCC for an asset on the XDC network or on the blockchain network. And that's the thing. So as you see trade volume increase for all these assets that are on chain, so like let's say there was a bunch of Tesla stock or whatever, and let's say there was $1 million in trade volume. Well, if that $1 million in trade volume increases, the tool to be able to move that trade volume, being the native cryptocurrency, also I wouldn't say increase, but increases in demand because you need more of it to move more of that trade volume, more of those assets. So as you see more tokenization, more assets, more trade, more engagement, that on-chain engagement creates just as much demand as the like, traditional exchange engagement. It's still demand for the native cryptocurrency as a neutral form of like capital, neutral form of exchange. So yeah, the biggest thing is yeah, people like to talk about like oh people buying and selling crypto, but it's really about how many things are being put on chain and how much of the native cryptocurrency is used to be able to manage and move value of those things that are on chain. Like a simple example could be like, let's say you had $100 in Tesla stock, right? And I wanted to buy it from you. So I would have $100 in XTC and I would buy it from you. And this thing, there's a demand for the XTC to be able to conduct that trade. So let's say instead of $100 I need to buy, or $100 worth of stock I need to buy, I need to buy $150 worth of stock. Well, now I need $150 worth of the native cryptocurrency to be able to make that exchange, meaning that there's more demand for the cryptocurrency to be able to facilitate those exchanges. And that's the big thing that's going to cause a lot of demand is a lot of tokenization, trade volume amongst those assets that are tokenized, and essentially the increase in trade volume in that is going to cause the increase in demand for the native cryptocurrency to be the neutral form of capital for that trade volume. These are good though. That was definitely a good one. Oh, so someone just said my son is 15. Do you recommend a direction I point him in to get him into Web3? So don't even phrase it as Web3. It's just tech. The reason I say that is having an understanding of having understanding of basic elements of technology is what you need, and then you can find how you would apply those to different things. So like you want to get into Web3, well, Web3 is sort of like a very vague broad space. Like he could get into programming, he could get into like system administration, he can get into like a zillion different things, and that's all in his own interest. I think the biggest thing is to find different things in tech that he likes, and then cater towards those things. And then once you have a foundational understanding of different, whether it's programming, whether you're getting into computers, it doesn't really matter. Once you have and I only say that because tech is sort of like it's very easy to get discouraged, and usually the best way to not get discouraged is to build a foundation in something that you're comfortable with, and then being able to move that foundation into other things. Perfect example for me, I didn't just jump into Web3. I was a cloud developer, Web2 cloud developer. That was my entire like career path. But I just sort of I came across an opportunity where the firm I was working at, they wanted to look into crypto in terms of being able to use it as that neutral form of capital and sort of this whole thing with like automated lending. I ended up just reading up a bunch about blockchain because we were already instituting that system in the cloud. So it was like, oh, how can we use blockchain to institute that system? I didn't go into blockchain and go, oh, like with all this blockchain, what do I do? I sort of had this like preconceived idea of this is how you build a traditional application, and I see how you would build that, and I can possibly see how I can use these technologies to build a better system than how we have it over here. And then you sort of go from there. And I only say that because everyone's like intro into technology is different. And usually the best way to do it is through some form of interest and then just start expanding onto other things. It's incredibly frustrating. So like for an example, like let's say it was programming. I wouldn't say get directly into smart contracts if you want to get into programming. I would say like build a simple Python hello world, and this is a simple example, but the thing is start with something comfortable and simple and then start moving your way into those fields that are a little bit more interesting, just so he doesn't feel too discouraged because I know it can be a lot. Oh, okay. Generally, in what ways will the blockchain or Web3 affect small businesses slash websites? So there's a few ways you can look at this. We can look at it from we can look at it from the standpoint of building an app, and we can look at it from the standpoint of like payments. From the standpoint of building an app, you can just run backend logic on a smart contract and then hook that up to your website. Now, there's multiple ways you can do that. You can create a native crypto application that allows you to use a browser wallet to sign into the application and interact with it. That's actually how most blockchain applications operate. And really, the big benefit of that is really the big benefit of that is you don't necessarily need to pay for the hosting cost of the smart contract because the users pay the transaction fee to interact with the smart contract directly, meaning it's basically free for you to host your backend logic or whatever. And then as well as if you, let's say you have payments or let's say you have other components also baked into that smart contract, third party services, businesses, whatever can now tap into can go tap into those features and functions. A simple example that I like to give is let's say, and this is sort of cliched, but I think it's probably the best example. So let's say we had a token that represented corn, right? And this corn is at and I only say this because these examples are they're sort of esoteric, but like it's not like Web3 can just apply to everything. So it's one of these things where when you're going into what makes these things valuable, they're really esoteric. But the example is, let's say I had a token and it represented corn, and this farmer had this corn token, and he put that corn token into a marketplace, and somebody bought the corn token. So that marketplace, that token technically is its own smart contract that represents a unit of account, that's the corn. That marketplace is its own application, a separate application that you're tapping into to be able to sell that asset. Now let's say somebody on the other side buys that and they want to track that asset in a supply chain. So now they'll take that token and they'll take it out of that application and put it into a supply chain application. And now you're able to take that same piece of corn and pass it into multiple different applications and services without each individual developer team, whatever, having to collaborate with the other ones to be able to do this. So ideally, what you'd be able to do is you'd be able to interact with third-party services and third-party applications and being able to pass tokens or units of accounts between each other without having to manage a bunch of databases, without having to manage a bunch of APIs, without having to manage a bunch of systems to be able to do that. And I say that because if you were to do that in like Web 2 or in the cloud, well, you have to build out a whole bunch of services to make that possible. Where I could just launch a smart contract and people can very easily tap into it, and third-party services and third-party tokens can pass through it into other services as well. So the biggest, and that's sort of in the like sort of in the finance way, but the biggest thing is the ability for applications to be able to connect with each other without the individual parties having to come together and decide that. Or either individual parties having to go read up on some documentation or some APIs or anything. You can just execute the smart contract directly. Other smart contracts can execute the smart contract directly. So you can have these applications that build on top of each other in such a way that traditional applications today would have a really difficult time doing. Um, yeah, I hope that answered your question all right. Yeah, if you got any more questions, um, just so everybody knows, like I see a lot of XRP questions. I mean, I'm familiar with the XRP network, but I'm not like up to date with everything XRP. Like, and I'm not quite using. I was using XRP a little bit before a few months ago, but I'm not currently using XRP now. So whatever is relevant, like some people ask for like the AMM or something like with Ripple, I'm not up to date with any of that stuff. I literally anything XCC, I'm pretty up to date with. If you want to talk about XRP, like the technology or what it can do, why you'd use it, all that, that's cool. But yeah, anything that's like relevant in the past like 3 months, I'm just like, yeah, whatever. Like I've got my own stuff to be sort of relevant on. Yeah, so someone just asked any real world use case coming soon to XDC, not just future use case. There's real world use case right now, but the thing is these are back end systems, so you would never see it. Like that's like saying, is there a real world use case for Oracle databases? I never see someone set that up. Well, there's probably like a quarter of the applications you use might use an Oracle database. You would never know. And it's one of those things where like you could be sitting there going, well, when is it happening? It's happening now, but it's happening in such a way that the average person wouldn't engage with it because it's some back end system. So like with XDC, we have like trade trust tokenizing documents. We have trade tech tokenizing securities. We had uh, USTY that has stable coins backed by US treasuries. These are all happening right now. Like these are all happening right now. Like it's not, but it's one of those things where like these are just business like services. And usually like esoteric niche business services for like finance like based like applications. So yeah, like there's adoption all the time. It's just that this adoption isn't just like a lot of people seem to think this idea of adoption is these full blown applications, these full blown everything that we're using. We're all in this crypto whatever world, and these are just back end systems. Like you would never know. You like just like you would never know if your app that you're running, the website that you're on right now is running on AWS or Azure. You would never know, and you would never care. But like, and I say that because I mean, don't get me wrong. If you want to go through the freaking steps and like query their freaking like DNS and query their like IPs or something to figure out that it's an AWS server, sure. But like that means nothing to you. But at the same time, it does allow you to be able to build services that do mean something to you. But at the same time, too, those services, those technologies are built on a bunch of other technologies to allow those services to be provided. So it's not like there's just a Linux server somewhere, or there's just a AWS cloud environment somewhere, or if there's just a website somewhere. There are a bunch of layers of technology all on top that build you this application that you see so nicely in your hand in your mobile app. But these are just protocols. Like that's like saying like I don't see the growth in TCP or whatever. It's like it's just like the basic internet protocol. You don't see it. It's just something that's being used between different applications to be able to conduct some service. So yeah, and it irritates me a little bit in crypto because there's so many of these like hype projects that are like, oh, we're getting hacked, oh my god, oh my god. But like any business ever doesn't necessarily like hype up the technology in their business. They just hype up whatever their business is. So if they're using crypto, they're not going to hype you on the crypto. They're just going to say, oh, we allow these new services, however those crypto services allow them to be had. And probably the main ones are going to be just like instant payments. But from your perspective, you just may see the instant payment. You still may be dealing with dollars or whatever. But from their perspective, they may be using this capital on the back end to be able to handle settlements. So yeah, this is all happening now. It's just that it's not sexy. Like that's like it's it's hard to articulate because like if I were to say the same thing for cloud, there people would be asking themselves now, when is the cloud revolution? because it's invisible. Like I can almost barely even tell you when it started and when it ended because it's so merged with everything that we do. It's not like we just flick the switch and now we're in the cloud internet. It sort of just started becoming more and more of a thing. Streaming, gaming, video on demand. These are all components of cloud. But it wasn't like it was shoved in our faces. I mean, it sort of was. There's like Google Cloud and iCloud sort of, but even in that capacity, it's so nebulous how they even describe how they're using cloud because that doesn't mean anything to you. What matters to you is you just save your files and you don't have to think about it. Just like what matters to you is you move money or send money, you don't have to think about it. These are things that people don't typically think about with other technologies, yet seem to think that this is unique with crypto when it's the exact same thing. Like it's just some backend service being utilized in some way to be able to create some application with a bunch of other technologies for some business somewhere. Oh my goodness. I see a bunch of doomers. It's gonna take decades for it's like it's I think people say this because I don't think people have an understanding of what adoption looks like. I think people have this idea that adoption is it's in my hand, I adopted it. And we didn't do that with cloud. We didn't do that with Linux. We didn't do that with any of these other technologies. But we keep doing this with crypto. It's gonna be in my hand, adopted. It's gonna be in my hand, adopted. I'm gonna see it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna touch it. I'm gonna. And it's like these are these back-end exoteric technologies. Like, have you ever even seen a smart contract? Have you ever even seen a token? Like, no, it means nothing to you. Um, So I see someone saying, I don't know a lot about XDC, but I think it uses EVM compatible smart contracts. So if I use XDC, then users can use MetaMask and switch to the XDC network. It's just like I stated earlier, in that like if someone wanted to create a web application that connected directly to a smart contract, yes. But at the same time, you can create smart contracts with API hot wallets to so users are using some API that's executing the key, so they never have to use the wallet anyway, and they can still execute the smart contract. Most smart contracts now that are direct website, yeah, that's what you can do. You just switch it over to whatever RPC. But that's not the only way smart contracts can be used as well. Like I could use the example like, oh, you could use Linux to run an Apache server, run a website. That doesn't mean Linux is only used to run websites. That's just one example of how someone could use this technology in this way. And it may be the most popular, but it's it's a protocol, so you can kind of do anything. Yeah. Anybody got any more questions? This is actually kind of cool. Yeah, I was kind of hoping. I was hoping the space was going to be a lot more engaging, but um, yeah. You guys have any more questions? I'm probably gonna let the stream go on for like another 30 minutes or so, unless something interesting happens on Twitter. Unless something interesting happens on Twitter, like I might hop in the XOPL friend space again. I just like I don't know. I don't know what they were talking about. They were kind of just cursing a bunch, which I sort of have to be a little careful because I'll get demonetized if they curse too much. Um, but uh, but yeah. Any more AMAs? Any more questions? I might hop in there. Um, Someone said I'm really bullish on XDC and how it is and utilizing transportation finance. XCC is not listed on very many exchanges, and it seems odd for such a great project. So let me give you guys a little bit of the insider knowledge, right, of crypto, right? And it's not even really insider knowledge, but when it comes to a lot of these like crypto, whether it's exchanges, whether it's wallets, it's more politics than anything. If I created a meme coin and pump that meme coin to the moon tomorrow, they'll list me on Coinbase like immediately. It really just comes down to this idea of how much hype slash activity slash it's 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 almost like this number, right? And it's like, oh, if we see this much activity, we'll just add it, right? So people go, oh, I see all these amazing things about this technology. Yeah, well, I can create a shit coin, pump it to the moon tomorrow, and get it on Coinbase like that, just because they know they'll make money because there's some crazy amount of ridiculous activity. Even if it's unsustainable, even if it goes to the moon and comes straight back down, they'll put it on Coinbase. So the biggest thing that really comes down to it is, well, one, they're the ones who make all the decisions. But two, it really just comes down to, do they believe they can make enough money off of you based off of some level of engagement that they perceive that you had? And a lot of that is meme coins. You look at Coinbase and go, oh, Coinbase, yeah, they lift a lot of meme coins because they know a lot of people just buy them or whatever. It doesn't really matter. But it's almost like politics at this point, where it's like, oh man, if we were just to pump it or whatever, just anything, yeah, maybe you might see more exchanges. But at the same time, like I said, someone just pumped a random stupid coin. Exchanges will just list it because they know it's a quick cash grab. So yeah, like the status of the network and what people are doing on the network has nothing to do with how different exchanges adopt the token. It's entirely like separate. But I think people have this idea that people go to the exchanges to buy crypto as adoption, so they completely miss the notion that these are separate ideas. And that's the thing, adoption isn't just somebody going to an exchange and buying crypto. That's not adoption. That's just like speculative investing, basically. Adoption is me building an app and then having users that use that app and being able to use that app to move capital for my users so that they can basically have some sort of service. That's adoption. Because I can have an app that has 1 million users and be able to move X amount of millions of dollars for whatever those users are in that app effectively, and then be able to scale it up based off that. Not just, oh, it needs to be on more exchanges so more people can hold it in their wallet to do nothing and hope that they can sell it back for dollars even though they claim crypto is the future. It's just yeah. Someone asked, do we want to freaking Bobby? Do you want to be a full time streamer? I don't know about full time streamer. I want to stream all of my actual. I want to stream my engagements, so I don't have to say, "Oh, I was talking to this guy," or "I did saw this thing." I just want to stream it, so I don't have to like reiterate over it. I feel like it just saves time. Ideally, whenever anything interesting is happening, I should be streaming it. Like I said, it just saves time. Uh, but yeah, hopefully that's the case. And maybe if I do so many things so often, maybe I'm always streaming. Who knows? But yeah, who knows? It'd be cool. Any more questions? These are actually some pretty fire questions. Yeah, these are pretty fire. What's the best way to get into blockchain career-wise, school, or just dive in? So the real answer is to probably start a project that shows some level of competency in crypto, and it's all open source. So if you can just prove that competency in open source, now a lot of people may be thinking, oh, does that mean I have to start a GitHub and start coding? Not quite, although that'd be the easiest way. If you want to just snap your fingers and be in crypto, create some stupid like crypto like solidity contract for some token or whatever just to show that you've done it before. And that's a very easy way to show competency in that regard. Now, if you're not a developer, what I would say you should do is find developers that work on open source projects and see if you can just help them in any way. Whether it's in documentation, whether it's in anything, it doesn't really matter. Some sort of administration or something, and then you can use that as a way to show competency around crypto as well. So you may not be a developer, but you may have an understanding of like GitHub and documentation, and you may have an understanding of whatever the thing that you're really like interested in crypto. You can sort of work that dynamic. I don't like, don't get me wrong, like you could sort of like go apply for like some crypto job, but it seems as if like the majority of crypto jobs are looking for people that have already been in crypto or finding like basically just developers and pushing them into crypto. So yeah, just so yeah, just that. What are you working on, and can we get another code with Quincy? So yeah, actually, I'll talk about this a little bit too. This is kind of cool. So for like the past like probably a little less than a year, but maybe a little over a year, I was building a project called Nuclei for a bit, and it's basically a dashboard that allows you to interact with your wallet, smart contract, tokenized assets, dexes, like basically anything on chain. You can interact with basically anything on chain, but you don't necessarily need to hold a crypto wallet to do so. So you can essentially have this hot wallet API slash dashboard that can manage all of your assets, tokenize assets, interact with dexes, and interact with the smart contracts, and not necessarily have to hold crypto. Now I sort of dialed it back because I'm like, oh, okay, I have this dashboard, but for whom, right? The idea of tokenization isn't so much a technical one, but like a legal one for recognizing the asset. So I ended up in like a really weird position where I'm like, oh, I could technically tokenize this, but who's gonna legally recognize it? So I ended up rolling back a little bit, and I built out the API. So I'm like, is there a way that I can use this hot wallet API? And it does a little bit more than just the hot wallet. Like it can deploy infrastructure, like private nodes. It can deploy, actually, it can deploy other APIs, but just a bunch of other things that it was a suite of tools that allowed you to be able to launch a bunch of blockchain tools without actually having to know development or having to know key management and all of that. And right now, actually, so for a while, I was like, okay, cool. And to be honest, it was almost like an enterprise dashboard wallet, if you want to put it that way, because of the tokenizing element. But then I'm like, okay, well, I have the technology to be able to build this like enterprise dashboard where you can tokenize and manage assets and manage keys and do all this. But I'm like, dashboard for what? So originally I was thinking, okay, well maybe I can figure out, maybe I can find a demand, or maybe I can find demand for people that want to be able to tokenize commodities and be able to manage those commodities on chain. That was like the first thing I thought. I was like, okay, cool. If I can find somebody that doesn't necessarily know how to manage crypto on, like the whole premise is crypto is incredibly complicated. And the average business doesn't want to deal with that complication. They want to deal with the business solution. So if I can find someone that had a business solution that didn't necessarily know how to implement the complexity, the API is essentially supposed to be a bridge between their traditional legacy systems and the blockchain. And that was the thing I was trying to focus on for a little bit. And I spoke to Jake Claver about it. I had him on a little bit ago. And then he just totally burst my bubble. He's like, "Oh, dude, that'd be so sick. That'd be so awesome." But if you're gonna do a commodities deal, the smallest deals are like $7 million each, and then you're gonna need to find a buyer on that side. So not only do you need someone to tokenize it, but then you need to find a buyer. And usually those deals, like the smallest ones, are like 7 million, but the average one's gonna be like 100 million. So now you have to freaking find $100 million worth of assets, or worth of commodities to tokenize, as well as find $100 million worth of buyers just to justify the dashboard, the enterprise dashboard, and then continuously create continuous trade volume through that. And I'm like, okay, cool. The technological portion of that doesn't seem too challenging, but I have no idea how we would even go for like the process for trying to manage like the line of credit and finding the commodities and trying to be a market maker and trading them. All of that would have been insane. And I'm like, oh god, this has to be, oh my goodness. So there was a little bit of time where I was like, oh, okay, well, it's not even that commodities were difficult. It was just there. Really, the biggest thing was like the supply chain component and the tracking. There's a whole thing with that. But it wasn't even just so much that. So I focused like, okay, maybe not commodities. Well, maybe we can do something with like maybe bonds actually. And actually like spoke to someone on LinkedIn about it. This guy on LinkedIn reached out, talking to me, asking me about what it would be like to tokenize municipal bonds on XDC. And we got into like a little chat. And I'm like, oh my god, it'd be actually really cool. If you could be able to issue your bonds, and I could be able to use my API, and we could basically allow basically a means for people to issue bonds on chain without necessarily having to go through the complexity of handling crypto to do that. And I'm sort of like in limbo with that. I was talking to him on LinkedIn for a little bit, but now I'm sort of in this weird limbo where I have this API that allows you to manage all these crypto tools without actually having to be a developer or having to manage the wallets or anything. You can manage multiple wallets, like you can manage like infinite, like 100,000, whatever wallets. Because if you're a business or something and you have employees or even users, each one of those users and each one of those employees can have an account with a wallet associated with it that automatically signs anytime they execute a smart contract. But then it's the solution, right? So you essentially have this like this Web 2 to Web 3 bridge that allows people to integrate their Web 2 systems into, like I said, smart contracts and such. But then I don't have a business solution, right? It's one thing to be able to interact with a smart contract to do something, but then what's the thing that needs to be done, right? I'm not like a municipal bonds guy or a commodities guy. I have a pretty like hypervisory understanding of a lot of these things, but I'm not gonna go. I can't go into every little line. And that was actually another thing too. I spoke to Jake. I was like asking him for like the schema for the data that's being tracked for all the commodities and stuff and all that and everything. And it's relatively difficult unless you're in that space, unless you're a commodities broker or unless you're in the bonds or anything. You don't have all those details, or you wouldn't have all those details unless you're in that position. So I'm sort of in this like scavenger hunt of trying to find different business solutions that have a lot of promise and opportunity to operate on chain, but they don't necessarily have the technology stack to facilitate that. And I exactly have that technology stack, the API. There's a little bit of like integration in terms of like connecting it with your traditional system and being able to like deploy a smart contract and be able to interact with that as well. But the main premise is like the backbone for being able to manage these hybrid applications is already established. So it's really trying to find an application that has promise, but doesn't necessarily have the backbone to be able to facilitate users that don't hold crypto. And don't get me wrong, this actually isn't that much of an original idea. I actually think this is going to be a standard that everyone's going to do. But I do think people are going to do it a little bit differently. There's sort of like a base level of it, as well as like being able to launch like what is it, like infrastructure components, like setting up nodes, setting up RPCs, setting up private nets, whatever. That's also included as well. So yeah, the big thing is got this API hot wallet that can bridge Web 2 and Web 3. I don't necessarily have a solution, although I feel like this thing, it's not even the solution. It's if you have the tech to do something, you would need every single step of the business solution to make sure you do it correctly. So this means compliance. This means like this is a whole list of stuff that has almost nothing to do with the technology to be able to manage some sort of business solution, especially when you're dealing with assets like commodities or bonds or something. And that's just something that you can't be ignorant when dealing with. So I'm like on a treasure hunt for finding highly promising Web3 applications and then allowing them to be compatible with Web2 services and allowing users to be able to interact with those applications without having to hold crypto. But that's just what I'm up to. Frequency, thanks for sharing your knowledge. Where/how do you see XTC as part of the real life tool usage 5 years from now? So this goes back to the neutral form of capital. If it's a neutral form of capital, then it's going to be used as a trade medium. Now the real question is, who's going to be trading what in this trade medium? Now the generic answer is trade finance, but the real answer is uh, there's a lot of different economic activity. There's a lot of economic activity that is being facilitated by different businesses that operate on chain. And as those businesses scale, so do those activities as well. So it's easy to go, oh, when are we gonna so it's hard to describe because I saw this with cloud. It was invisible with cloud. It's invisible with blockchain. But if you try to tangibly put it in a way to where you're like, when do I see it? You don't. That's like me in the '90s saying Linux is going to run every single computer or run the majority of the computers on the internet. And you go, when will I see that? You don't. You don't see the servers. Like you don't see that. It's there. It's running. But it's not like you're going to be going, oh, I see it. But the thing is these things are happening all the time. The biggest things that I think that you would want to correlate adoption or growth is what businesses are using crypto or XCC and how big are they growing. If you want to be real generic about that, just see how big Zinfin's growing. Like just how people go, oh my God, Ripple's growing. It's the same thing as Zinfin. If Zinfin's growing, they use the network, then you're seeing demand from the network. And Zinfin works with a bunch of other trade partners like Trade Finex and a couple other ones too, maybe Trade Trust. So as that engagement and as that activity it increases, so will the demand for the network. And the biggest thing is looking at what that activity looks like, which is really in the form of apps and users, different services that users are using, and those services being scaled up, as opposed to like this tangible thing that like, oh, I see the crypto adoption, I see it, and it's like unless you're one of those back end engineers, brokers, lawyers, or anything, you're not going to touch these, just like you would never touch Linux or never touch these cloud systems. So we're seeing them now. Like it's invisible, but it's not invisible. It's just that you wouldn't interact with it. Like that's like being in like 2005 and talking about like cloud hosting. And okay, maybe one day, let's say like one day you aren't able to watch like on demand video, and now you are. That's a cloud feature, but you would never contextualize that as a cloud feature. You just go, it's on demand video. It just shows me video on demand. Different applications being able to scale worldwide almost instantly, like Uber, being able to host up their infrastructure all over the world so they can be able to launch on demand. That's a cloud thing. But it's so invisible, like no one's going, oh yes, cloud, yes, Uber just launched cloud. No, it's so invisible that the average person probably would never know nor care of that. Same thing with crypto. The real thing that you can tell is, and you want to say Amazon or whatever too, is the apps that are built on top of them and how well are they growing. So if you wanted to see how well Amazon's or AWS, Tesla operates on AWS. So if Tesla is growing, you're probably going to see their AWS bill go up as well. Netflix runs on AWS. This is how you would see the tangible growth of cloud. So how you see the tangible growth of crypto is crypto applications that are typically user friendly, because people typically think of crypto applications of like, oh, a browser wallet and sending crypto. No, the crypto application is just an application that just so happens to use blockchain on the back end. Just like the cloud application is just an application that uses cloud on the back end. But yeah, it's just these things are everyone always says when is adoption, and they say that because they want to see it for their eyes. And like, if I were to tell you in 1992 Linux is going to be running on 90% of the computers, you would still be asking me when do I see this, because you would have never tangibly saw it. Um, Someone said, so what solutions from the different sectors, parts of a complete solution make a full solution? I think you're asking, what are all the different parts that come together that build a full application for the average user? And I think what people don't see in that is the average app you use uses like probably multiple dozens different technologies to be able to allow that to run the way it does. So what solution will be created first? So these are just technology stacks. So if like you're building a website, you're gonna have your server, right? You're gonna have some Apache like web stack on top of it, and then you might have like a database over here. These are all different technologies. So it's like when it comes to blockchain too, it's not like someone's like, oh, one someone's just gonna like create the what it these things will build on top of each other. So any sort of app anyone wants to build, they would just build the app. It's not like oh, this new solution's here. It's just an app. Now, don't get me wrong. I think the apps that are going to be used on blockchain are going to be a little bit different. And when I say app, I say it from a developer standpoint, not a user standpoint. So I mean, any piece of code that just runs is an app. All right. Where a user may be thinking of a full blown user interface application, everything. Um, but the thing is these apps can be tapped into by other apps on chain, by other dApps or whatever. So the biggest thing is it's not just when are we going to see a full solution or whatever. These are just different parts of the technology stack. That's like saying when are we going to see a full solution of Linux and databases. It's like, I mean, you could have a website or you could have whatever. You put these technologies together. You know what I mean? So and that's the thing that makes it so abstract and so hard to see, because even the way that you put these technology, like if I was to tell you how would you picture a website being put together or how would it run, you probably have no conceptualization at all. And I could probably walk you through the entire thing. It wouldn't mean anything because, like, what does it mean for you to be able to touch a? What does it mean for you to be able to touch the VPC of a cloud stack and set up all these different like an API or something? It means nothing to the average person. So it's just these are just different tools that come together, and as people build as people put these tools together, that's when you get full blown applications. Like when you have an app on your phone, the mobile application is different than the app different than the code that's running on the server, which is different than any sort of code that's running in a database, that's different than any sort of analytics infrastructure that's running some sort of user analytics, different from there's a zillion things that come together to make an app, and you can pick apart each individual one of those things and define that thing as a individual unique piece. Crypto is like that too, but it's it's abstract, so you don't get a chance to see it. Like if I was to say, oh, it'd be cool to be able to build a solution that's able to keep track of a list for me, well, I could create an API that does that, but to you, that wouldn't seem like a solution. It would just seem like some backend function that spit out some data. But that's the thing, though. They take that backend function and you stick it with another function, and you stick it in a server with a few other functions, and you put a UI, and now you have an app. But that's the thing, though. When you do it with crypto, it's like you have a smart contract, maybe another third-party smart contract, maybe a token between the smart contract, maybe you have a user interface, maybe you have a hot wall API, then you have the app. You see what I mean? There are all these pieces that come together to build the full user interface, the application that you interact with. But when you describe these pieces individually, they can be used for a multitude of different things individually, whether it's a tiny segment of an application or whether it's like the backbone of an application. Nice, nice. It's looking pretty good. Um, oh, it looks like someone's getting a little angsty in the chat. I mean, if you want to look at all the someone asked like what partnerships or whatever, so you got to remember these are open source technologies. So what's a partnership? Is a partnership a relationship between the foundation and an organization, or is it a conversation about an organization using the technology in some way, or is it just someone using the technology in some way? If you want to go look at and I only say that because these are different layers of answering that question. You can go to GitHub and see who's using the technology at a base layer, but you can go to the XCC Foundation and see a list of all the different partners that are on chain, just utilizing and by partners, I usually mean partners with either Zinfin or some other established organization. But usually someone on chain that they're engaging with, and usually they're engaging with each other. It's kind of like a small like group or whatever. Most of these are based out of Singapore though too. So this is another thing too. Since everything's not in the U.S., not everyone gets to see everything, so everyone acts like it doesn't exist. So um, honestly though, I might if people want more information on stuff on XDC, I will drop. We just released a milestone document on basically everything that happened in XDC in the past year. I think it's probably the best document in terms of being able to reference everything that was interesting in 2013 or 2023. If I can find it real quick. Um, my goodness. Well, if you guys got any more questions while I'm looking for this link? Thanks, Quincy, for your input. For newcomers, what would you advise they should look for choosing a few? Uh, sorry, the grammar on this is just weird. Maybe I'll just read it literally and maybe it'll sound right. Thanks, Quincy, for your input. Thanks, Quincy, for your input for newcomers. What would you advise what they should look for in choosing a few to choose? I don't know what that even supposed to say. I'm sorry, man. I don't even know what that's supposed to say. I think what you're trying to say is, how would people, how do you find a place to start? I think is what you're trying to say. Um, yeah, I think that's what you're trying to say. So if you want to sort of take your first steps into crypto or find a new way to get into crypto, I think the simplest thing you could do is for any technology you find interesting. People like to talk about the white papers. Go read the documentation. It will go through every little piece of everything. And you don't have to read everything, but I would say anything that you're questioning, you're not sure about, go to the documentation. And I say this as a general thing too, because I don't really know like to what degree you want to get involved in crypto, whether it's like a speculator element or whether you want to get educated or maybe you want to be a builder. But the first thing I would say before you do anything is read the documentation on any technology. That's what I did with XRP. When I talk about XRP, I read the documentation, and most of the stuff I reference is referencing back to that documentation. But if you want to get a good understanding of most technologies, just read the documentation around it. There are even like FAQs and stuff that you can find, like you know. So yeah, that's a good one. Awesome, awesome. Any more questions, everybody? What are we at now? Oh, we're almost at an hour. Nice. Well, in that case, I'm just kidding. If we have more questions, I'm always down. Oh, actually, no. In that case, let me check the space. If the space is lame, then maybe I'll just chill with the questions again. Um, usually Lady K is pretty cool. So
You're still brown on the inside, ese. I'm Miklo. Ese.
Ginger is
I
basically
dye my hair
the
purple, but
Venus
don't call me.
I don't even know. I don't even know. I don't even know. I'll do some questions. I'll do some last minute questions real quick. Uh, Someone asked, why is XDC not in Brazil? I do not know. I do not live in Brazil. I don't know. Maybe it could be like a legal thing there, like it is here or something. I don't know. Like, I see someone laughing at the space. Yeah, that was probably one of the just craziest little. I don't even know. That probably was just the craziest instance of like a 5 second glimpse that I've had in a space on Twitter. Just chaos. But yeah, if I don't have any more questions, if you guys don't have any more questions, tomorrow, uh, it's 10 o'clock Mountain Time. I don't know what it would be for the other times, but tomorrow 10 o'clock Mountain Time, I will be on the Expectaverse space talking about Metaverse, talking about games, talking about virtual worlds, and yeah, so it'd be cool to come check that out.